Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
But we begin tonight with a chilling moment, I gotta say. I don't know any other way to say it. The President of the United States threatening violence to stay in power. Sounds weird coming out of my mouth, but that's what happened. When explicitly asked to commit to a peaceful transfer of power today, he declined, and this was his response.
Will you commit to making sure that there is a peaceful transferal of power after the election?
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster.
And but people are rioting. Do you commit to making sure that there's a peaceful transferal of power?
We want to get rid of the ballots, and we'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation. The ballots are out of control. You know it. And you know who knows it better than anybody else? The Democrats know it better than anybody else.
Just to be clear, if you're talking to a person and you ask them to commit to behave peacefully and they refuse, they're threatening violence, right? What the president is doing here is the most explicit that he has been about his plans for this election. He's plotting in open and public repeatedly a coup to steal the election and hold on to power. Again, it all sounds crazy to say. It is what we are seeing. Those are the plain facts as assembled before us. It's not a behind-the-scenes type of thing. It's happening in public, in plain view. The election is 41 days away. People are already voting. And look, a few things can happen between now and November 3rd. I mean, the polls could all be wrong. It could turn out that Donald Trump is just much more popular than it appears to be right now, even with 200,000 plus Americans dead from a pandemic. Or some event could happen that changes things dramatically, and Donald Trump could just win. He could win outright. He could win the popular vote in the Electoral College in a clear and evident fashion. That is a possibility. Another possibility, one that right now polls would indicate is much more likely, is that if Democrats fight and organized and the broad bipartisan anti-Trump majority in this country comes out and votes in unprecedented numbers, that Joe Biden could sweep by 8 or 9 or 10 points in the popular vote, as many as 400 Electoral College votes, a decisive, historic, unambiguous rout. That's another possibility. But we also may land somewhere between those two ends, where the margins are tight and the outcome is not obvious right away. And that's what the president is very explicitly planning for. Because those tight margins, that ambiguity, sets in motion his plan to steal the election. Now, there are already attempts all over the country to make it harder for Democratic constituencies to vote. There's voter ID requirements. Those have been around a while. And there's plans to send Trump-friendly volunteers to patrol polling places and intimidate voters. We saw that in early voting in Virginia after a consent decree that used to stop the Republican Party from doing that has lapsed. There are also, right, as part of this kind of attempt, there are lawsuits all over the country filed by the Trump campaign Republicans, places like Pennsylvania, right, where the Trump campaign Republicans sued to block voters from using drop boxes, of all things, to turn in their ballots, right? That's because they don't want people to be able to vote. And then Then there is the key tactic, the key rhetorical tactic, which is what we have seen time and time again. The relentless attacks, aided by William Barr's lies, on legitimacy and integrity of mail-in voting while the country is still in the midst of a once-in-a-century pandemic that has not ebbed because of the president's failures. And so the president has been attempting, successfully in many cases, to polarize views of mail-in versus in-person voting around support for himself. The goal is that the pro-Trump minority of the country, and it is a clear minority, let's be clear here, right now, as I speak to you, that minority votes in person on Election Day, and that the anti-Trump majority, perhaps more concerned about the pandemic, that they largely vote by mail. Of course, the president's abject mishandling and politicization of the coronavirus crisis has a lot to do with us being in this position to begin with. And now the president has been explicit about why he's doing this, right? He will take advantage of something called the red mirage, where more Republican votes come in first because those people voted in person, making it look like Trump is ahead on election night. And then he will attempt to use the courts to delay something called the blue shift, which is just the counting of more heavily Democratic mail-in votes. They're all the same votes. They're all just getting counted at different times, right? Keep that in mind, right? There's a stack that's over here. There's a stack that's over there. If the election night stack is very Republican and the mail-in stack that gets kind of later very Democratic, there's no difference between those votes. But he will try to use the courts then to invalidate as many of those mail-in ballots in this stack over here as he can. Remember, this is why today he refused to commit to a peaceful transfer of power, the mail-in ballots. Get rid of those ballots, he said. Those mail-in ballots are also the reason the president keeps saying that he is counting on the courts, the federal courts, to help him win. He's not going to wait for the ballots to be counted. He's saying it. That is why the president and his allies, like Senator Ted Cruz, are also making this part of their explicit argument to fill Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat on the Supreme Court. They're all out there. Mike Pence said the same thing. We should have 9 justices on the bench, an odd number, to resolve the election. Keep in mind, Republicans already have a 5-3 majority of the court. But apparently, they do not trust Chief Justice John Roberts to be enough of a hack to corruptly hand them the White House. So that's everything they're doing in public. But it is even worse in private behind the scenes, especially when you think about how they might use the power of the presidency, again, to corruptly steal the election after the votes are cast. And this is the subject of this new piece by Pulitzer Prize winner Bart Gellman titled "The Election That Could Break America." The piece is nearly 10,000 words long, and it breaks down just how much effort and planning is going into stealing the election. Now, Bart Gellman's going to be joining us in just a few minutes, but I want to take you through a piece of his reporting. Again, this is not like fan fiction. It's not like doom casting about what's going to happen. This is reporting, right? The Trump campaign reportedly actively engaged in conversations about appointing loyal electors for the Electoral College in battleground states where Republicans hold the legislative majority, with a justification, again, based on those claims of rampant fraud, right? The seeds he's been sowing. Trump would then ask state legislators to set aside the popular vote and exercise their power to choose a slate of electors directly. So in this scenario, after the president and his party litigate and they delay and they fight and they scratch and they claw, and hopefully they get lucky with a bunch of judges that Donald Trump installed, and they get them not to count as many of the mail-in votes as possible and take a long time, those votes that they suspect are largely Democratic, and then the Republican-controlled state legislators would agree to discount the will of the people of their states because, well, who can really say there's all this fraud? Just listen to the president and hand him his electors under victory in the Electoral College. I know, it sounds like dystopic science fiction. It's just the reality we live in right now. It's what is happening in front of our eyes. We have to be honest about it the same way we had to be honest about what the virus was going to do to this country back in late February. It is, frankly, a plan for an authoritarian power grab. Now, as you digest this, before you get paralyzed by this nightmare scenario, because part of the plan here, I think, is to kind of psych people into paralysis, there are even more nightmare scenarios we're going to talk about. But the key thing important to remember is there is an off-ramp here. And it doesn't lie with Donald Trump. It doesn't really lie with Mitch McConnell or federal judges or anyone. The off-ramp, the remedy to avoid all this, is just a historic mobilization of the country's anti-Trump, pro-democratic majority. Coming out to vote, delivering a resounding, unquestionable defeat to the president and his agenda in order to save American self-governance.
It is Thursday, the 24th of September of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well, we had quite a night last night, did we not? Quite a day. Apparently, the two officers who hit their target, and that target being an innocent black woman by the name of Breonna Taylor, plugged her 6 times, killing her. They will not be charged because they hit their target. But the guy who missed is the only one that will be indicted because he missed. When you're a cop, if you hit your target, no matter if it be innocent, and when I say it, that's about how much they think of the humanity of the target. When you hit your target, you are a successful hero, a warrior. And if that target is innocent, hey, just, these things happen. Collateral damage. How about we look at the warrant that was so thin, so gossamer thin? Well, was that brought up in the grand jury? We don't know. Now, I watched that press conference with that attorney general. Yeah. Trump has his Negro, doesn't he? He sure does. And I was not impressed with his crocodile tears. Of course, I didn't really notice the crocodile tears. But apparently enough of the world press did, or enough of the weird press. I didn't hear much about the inequity of the decision, but I did see and read a lot about, it was just so hard for him. He's black, too. And what was Trump's response? Praised the decision. The killing of an innocent black woman by police was praised. It was a witch hunt to go after those cops, apparently. The killing of her as some sort of crime was a mere hoax. A witch hunt. A hoax. Now, pile on top of that the supposed locals. Now, I'm not so sure how local they may be, because boy, do they pick up on the talking points right quick, almost like there's a playbook that they're following right there when they're typing it in. Or is it some sort of artificial intelligence that we're battling in a local front? But the gaslighting is in tremendous illumination. It's been brightly lit, the gaslighting. No such thing as icebox baby gulags. That's a mass delusion, apparently, according to these maggots. No such thing. Asylum seekers are not asylum seekers. They're illegals, and we deport them. And apparently there's nothing wrong with that. And the reason this mass delusion that's being perpetrated by the left, and that was called, we are now called the authoritarian left. Notice how they pick up on the lingo, the rhetoric. We are now the authoritarian left, and we're imposing our terrible jackboot will on the rest of the good Americans by forcing them to be healthy, think about the health of others, and maybe have their pre-existing conditions covered. Apparently that's a bridge too far. And with that, we have to be punished for having a black president and a Jew woman on the Supreme Court. Good riddance to that baby-killing witch. That's what we have to put up with locally. I don't know what it is for you. Some might say avoid that. Well, I'd like to, but it keeps following me wherever I go. Or is it that I just can't shut up and I say, hey, this is a lie. Shut the F up. Speaking of shutting the F up, John Durham has expanded his probe to include the Clinton Foundation. The number one charitable organization in the world, rated number one because their administrative costs and all the other things that they have in place to prevent corruption. And then, therefore, they are rated, well, if not number one, in the top 5, top 3 in the world. That has to be investigated because we know the Trump organization is so corrupt. Eric has to testify under oath in open court coming up here, what, in October? Coming up in another week or two. And so now they're going to go after Hillary Clinton. Well, I guess she's not going to get elected this year. All right, do it. Let's talk about Discovery then, John and Bill. Or is that not going to be allowed? Because we live in such anarchistic jurisdictional hell. Yeah. Well, you know what? You can take your anarchistic jurisdictional hell and ram it up your, Hades. I am so fed up with these, mass delusional idiots. How is it that I have to allow, say, for instance, on the personal front, I have a Trump bro that dropped out of high school because he was so incorrigible, got put in continuation high school. But, he was a big, and is still a big, good-looking guy. Got very rich lying to people selling them cars, retail and wholesale, I might add. Big-time rich. So, therefore, he has, apparently in the construct of this prosperity gospel whatever, he's been touched by God. He's a success. The mere accumulation of money is not success. But, maybe that's my excuse for not putting enough emphasis on the mere accumulation of money. Excuse me, but money was not the goal. The accumulation of money is to achieve another kind of goal. I guess. So, how is it? And I brought this up. I've been bringing this up a bit because I'm not the only one in this quandary. How is it? I spent 4 years just as an undergrad studying constitutional history and European law to get that history degree. And my Trump bro, who dropped out of high school because he was incorrigible and got put in continuation high school, it was just too much authority for him, is now the big authority on the Constitution. Because later in life he decided he always wanted to be a cop. Well, I guess most bullies do, don't they? Briefly a cop. I won't get into why he's not a cop, but let's just put it this way. If you think that authority is the goal, you might get found out and cooler heads might prevail. 56 hours in a police academy, and my Trump bro knows more about the Constitution than I do. And he's not the only one. Okay? These guys have 5,600 hours max to get out of a police academy. They give them a gun to shoot innocent black women, blame thug protesters, their words, for bringing it up, and then they get paid more than everybody else. Oh, because they have such dangerous jobs. Well, I don't know. Why don't you pay a roofer a little bit more? They have a more dangerous job. All right. Well, numbers don't lie, and that's why they want to shut us up, because they just, they don't like the truth. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, not confronting the truth. What better example than Trump and his ongoing project to steal the election, which, according to Chris Hayes, and I concur, it sounds like a dystopian science fiction, but as Chris stated, it is, quite frankly, a plan for an authoritarian power grab. Well, that authoritarian power grab, I think, began even before Inauguration Day, but, they're just making it up as they go along? I don't think so. I think someone is a puppet, and someone else is pulling the Cyrillic strings. See what I did there? On the rest of the menu, a major provider of software services to state, county, and local governments, including the online publishing of election results, informed the FBI it has been hacked. The software people that publish election results. Now that's what I call convenient in a Vladian way. Also coming up here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, instead of satanic Black Lives Matter Antifa arsonists, the huge wildfire near Los Angeles was started by Southern California Edison Utility Equipment, just like we told you so. And California is ready to pull the plug on gas vehicles. Oh boy, talk about an uproar. Wait until we get through this one. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where France's defense minister admitted to misleading the nation about troop virus safety from last winter. That is linked to France's first confirmed COVID-19 cluster. And German prosecutors filed charges against 8 more Volkswagen employees accused in the company's diesel emissions test scandal. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page is our chat room link, and our chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, you will not only help us fulfill our civic duty, but you also help us, more importantly, pay our bills so we can fly under the radar and fulfill our civic duty. If you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink, and I know people used to sit down and just drink those with impunity, out in public with no mask. Remember those days? Well, if you can still afford at least one of those and send that our way once a month, you will help us fulfill our civic duty, because we'll be paying our bills, getting the needed machinery to replace the workhorses that are still workhorsing, and the needed software too. And so then we continue resisting as the founders originally intended, so many years ago. Thank you for your generosity, for those of you who have been doing so. It has been so helpful. Indeed. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it's so simple. You just go to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of @Justice Putnam because I wouldn't expect anybody else to. I mean, I'm a rugged individual. Yeah, so rugged. Anyway, follow me there because I do post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime. And the easiest way to get there is to go to the links that I provide right there, when I post them up on Twitter and other social media platforms. Follow the show on Twitter @CookbookWest and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, hopefully Amazon and Audible, and wherever podcasts can be found. All right. Yeah, we'll get on Amazon and Audible as soon as I submit the little application that they make you fill out. Well, they don't really make you fill out. I just need to click the button, and then it'll go through its own review process. Alrighty, let's get into this first offering here. It comes out of the Associated Press, and this is pretty much breaking news. Frank Bajak and Jack Bleberg of the Associated Press bring us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A major provider of software services to state, county, and local governments, including the online publishing of election results, told customers yesterday, Wednesday, that an unknown intruder broke into its phone and information technology systems. You know, I might add, my mom's bank called her up and somebody tried to make a purchase, I believe, back east, not necessarily New York proper. You know, a small purchase, around $40. And they had to give her a new ATM debit card, which is, fine. But they even had the security number on the back. How'd that happen? Well, it can happen. But there's a lot of stuff going on in terms of hacking, so we better be careful. Like, I think they're by malign actors, hostile foreign powers possibly, who have declared war on us in Cyrillic. Tyler Technologies, a Plano, Texas-based S&P 500 company, said in an email to customers, I like that, customers, that it discovered the breach Wednesday morning, contacted law enforcement, and enlisted outside cybersecurity help. It did not say whether ransomware may have been involved. Really? Tyler provides software services for everything from jail and court management systems to payroll, human resources, tax and bill collection and land records, and it also serves schools. Uh-oh. You mean you can get the little kiddie's address and phone numbers and call them up and tell them to kill their mommy and daddy? Or worse. County governments in the Seattle, St. Paul, Minnesota, and Nashville areas have used the Tyler software Socrata. Well, that's questionable. See what I did there? Socrates, question. To share election data in the past, although it was not immediately clear whether they still do or how central the platform is to their election operations. DHS officials have warned that election results reporting systems could be attractive targets for hackers seeking to interfere in the November 3rd presidential election. Oh, you mean like releasing fake results that Trump won, so when actual paper ballots are counted, they don't count? Christopher Weber, also of the Associated Press, brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Federal investigators are looking into whether a huge wildfire near Los Angeles was sparked by Southern California Edison utility equipment, according to the company. Edison has turned over a section of an overhead conductor from its transmission facility in the area where the Bobcat fire started more than 2 weeks ago. The initial report of fire was near Cogswell Dam in the San Gabriel Mountains at 12:21 p.m. on the 6th of September. In an incident report filed with the State Public Utilities Commission last week, Edison said its nearby equipment experienced an issue 5 minutes earlier at 12:16 p.m. A circuit at a nearby substation experienced a, quote, relay operation, end quote, indicating its equipment detected some kind of disturbance or event. Cameras captured smoke developing in the area around 12:10 prior to the activity on Edison's circuit. Edison will assist the U.S. Forest Service in its investigation of the fire that has burned more than 24 homes and other buildings on its way to becoming one of the largest blazes in Los Angeles County history. Southern California Edison understands this is a difficult time for many people who are being impacted by the Bobcat fire, a spokesman said. Our thoughts are also with those affected by the wildfires currently burning across the western United States. Oh, prayers, thoughts, and prayers. All right. That's how they started. The Forest Service and the PUC did not immediately respond to emails seeking more information. In recent years, California utilities have strategically shut off power to some areas in order to prevent its equipment from sparking wildfires, which they denied for so long ever happened. Edison did not have any planned shutoffs in the days before the Bobcat fire erupted. Adam Beam of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. California will ban the sale of new gasoline-powered passenger cars and trucks in 15 years, Governor Gavin Newsom announced yesterday, Wednesday, establishing a timeline in the nation's most populous state that could force U.S. automakers to shift their zero-emission efforts into overdrive. Well, I actually think that Trump's going to prevent this from happening because, hey, that's what he does. The plan won't stop people from owning gas-powered cars or selling them on the used car market, but in 2035, it would end the sale of all new such vehicles in the state of nearly 40 million people. That accounts for more than 1 out of every 10 new cars sold in the U.S. California would be the first state with such a mandate, while at least 15 other countries have already made similar commitments, including Germany, France, and Norway. Oh, you mean suckers and losers. While environmental groups cheered the announcement, the oil industry panned it, and the automakers industry group sought a middle ground, saying it's committed to increasing zero-emission vehicles, but through cooperation among governments and businesses, not by mandates. Well, I'm sorry. You've had how many, 50, 60 years to put it together, and you can't? Hybrid this. Meantime, White House spokesman Judd Deere said flatly, here it comes, President Trump won't stand for it. And Larry Kudlow, Trump's economic advisor and resident cocaine freak, labeled it a very extreme position that he doesn't think other states will follow. Well, you know what? Everybody follows what California does. Always have, always will. Okay, we better get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Charlie and the Thought Factory. After years of television writing, Charlie Kaufman broke onto the big screen with 1999's indie earthquake, Being John Malkovich, directed by Spike Jonze. After Malkovich, Kaufman wrote additional unique screenplays, usually examining some tortured man's psyche. There was Adaptation, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, and Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. Yeah, those were all Kaufman. All directed by other people. However, now Kaufman directs his own work, such as his recent release, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Starring Jesse Plemons, Jesse Buckley, Toni Collette, and David Thewlis, all giving the level of performance that I imagine you get into movies to be able to do. I'm Thinking of Ending Things follows a young woman, Buckley, as she and her new boyfriend travel to a secluded farm for her first meeting with his parents. At the same time, our young woman is thinking of ending the relationship. There's a lot to talk about with this film, but if it's not too late, I don't want to deprive you of the experience that I had going in very clean. I'll give you this advice, though. Give the movie some time. It's a slow burn. After the intro, you have an excruciatingly strange 20-minute car ride scene before it dawns on you that this film is not another relationship drama. What is it? I'm Thinking of Ending Things is a densely layered, quietly surreal little puzzle that slowly and deftly unfolds like the love child of Beckett, Pinter Hitchcock, and people I'm not educated enough to cite. Now, frequently such movies captivate you so much with the mystery of how they tell their story that they can hide the fact that they don't really have much to say. I'm Thinking of Ending Things is a wildly odd and complex ride that's anchored on Kaufman's thesis that life is hard and wearisome, and you often don't get what you want. Is that simple theme strong enough to be that anchor? Does the movie give us insight into it? Good questions, but let's talk after you've seen the film, and you probably want to see it more than once. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Colorectal cancer is the number 2 cancer killer of men and women in the United States, but it is preventable. Early on, colorectal cancer typically has no symptoms. It starts with a precancerous polyp or abnormal growth in the colon, which can be removed without surgery. Several tests are available to find these polyps, so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. Screening also finds colorectal cancer early when treatment works best. Recommended screening for adults at average risk begins at age 50 and continues until age 75. Learn about screening test options and find out which tests are covered by insurance. Talk to your healthcare provider about when you should be screened and discuss the best tests for you. For more information about colorectal cancer prevention, please visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. Netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Does the United States inflict forced sterilizations on detained immigrant women?
I'm Lily Ledbetter, and this is a Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
Because of a whistleblower complaint, a gynecologist working for the United States immigration agencies has been linked to allegations of performing unwanted hysterectomies on detained immigrant women. Andrew Free, an immigration and civil rights attorney who is investigating medical treatment of women at the rural Irwin County, Georgia detention facility, said, "The indication is there's a systemic lack of truly informed consent that could ultimately result in sterilization." The ACLU has filed a Freedom of Information Act request to uncover the details of the claim. Under these circumstances, the Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security must conduct an investigation and must report his findings immediately. The allegations, in the context of the United States' history of sterilizing the most powerless people in society, demands no less. In the 20th century, 33 states had forced sterilization programs, and the Supreme Court, 8-1, okayed forced sterilization laws in its notorious 1927 decision, Buck v. Bell, and 70,000 Americans were forcibly sterilized. And even though Buck v. Bell has never been explicitly overruled by the High Court, we thought we had escaped that horrific history.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1918. That was the day that the Industrial Workers of the World Union was banned in Canada. The Industrial Workers of the World Union had grown steadily in Canada, reaching as many as 10,000 members by 1911. The union was especially strong in mining, logging, and the textile industry. But backlash against the radical union was mounting in the United States and in Canada. Swept up in Red Scare hysteria, the governments of both nations targeted the IWW. With the beginning of World War I, labor unions that dared to threaten strikes or to speak out against militarization were met with harsh reprisals. By 1914, the Canadian IWW had less than 1,000 members. In May of 1918, 18 Canadian IWW leaders were arrested while they attended a meeting in Ottawa. Those arrested were immigrants and were sent to a labor internment camp. Then the Canadian government moved to ban the organization altogether. The ban against the IWW would last until the end of World War I. Those found to be affiliated with the union faced up to 5 years in prison. 13 other organizations were also banned in Canada, including the Chinese Labor Association and the Social Labor Party. The act further read that it was illegal to attend meetings, except religious services, during the present war at which the proceedings are conducted in the language of any country with which Canada is at war, or in the languages of Russia, Ukraine, or Finland. After the war, the IWW was once again allowed in Canada and slowly began to rebuild. But the scars inflicted during the war years took a lasting toll on the union's membership. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
We begin another day with two huge stories vying for the lead. We'll begin with Trump's daily dump in the briefing room on Wednesday, when journalist Brian Karem came right out and asked,
"Will you commit to making sure that there is a peaceful transferal of power after the election?"
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster.
I understand that, but people are rioting. Do you commit to making sure that there's a peaceful transferal of power?
We want to get rid of the ballots, and we'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation. The ballots are out of control. You know it. And you know who knows it better than anybody else? The Democrats know it better than anybody else. Go ahead.
The second question is, will you...
Please, go ahead.
Why won't he...
So there you have it. Donald Trump admitted out loud he's threatening violence to stay in power. On a related note, The Atlantic has a must-read chilling story by Barton Gellman titled The Election That Could Break America. Gilman appeared on CNN Wednesday night and said that this was the first time in his career that he broke the fourth wall in an article because what he discovered was so disturbing and dangerous to democracy.
I did this piece in The Atlantic by starting with the proposition that President Trump is never going to concede defeat. Now, he could win a legitimate electoral majority, but if he doesn't, he will not concede defeat. And the system is surprisingly poorly designed to handle a president who won't concede. Concession is how we end elections. And Trump's plan is to halt the vote count with the day of votes, to litigate the rest into oblivion. And what I learned for this article and describe in great detail is that he and his people are talking about contingency plans to bypass the vote in each state. We think of electoral votes as just representing the results of the popular vote state by state. But the Constitution doesn't guarantee that. State legislatures have the power to appoint electors directly. And legislatures in 6 of the battleground states are controlled by Republicans. And the Trump campaign is talking about the possibility of asking those Republican legislators to disregard the popular vote because it has been rigged, and to simply appoint Trump electors to represent the state.
We need to be prepared. The other big story broke Wednesday afternoon when the grand jury in Louisville, Kentucky offered its report on the killing of Breonna Taylor, and we learned that sadly, nothing has changed. A grand jury indicted one of the officers involved in the fatal shooting of Breonna Taylor in her Louisville home, Brett Hankinson. But he was only charged with 3 counts of reckless endangerment for indiscriminately firing into a neighboring apartment, not for the shots that hit Taylor. Hankinson and 2 other officers forced their way into Breonna Taylor's apartment in Louisville in a March 13th raid. Taylor's boyfriend, fearing intruders, fired his legally possessed gun, and the officers responded with a flurry of gunfire. The other officers were not charged. Adding insult to injury, Kentucky's Attorney General Daniel Cameron further inflamed tensions with his explanation of why.
Our investigation showed, and the grand jury agreed, that Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in the return of deadly fire after having been fired upon by Kenneth Walker. Let me state that again. According to Kentucky law, the use of force by Mattingly and Cosgrove was justified to protect themselves. This justification bars us from pursuing criminal charges in Miss Breonna Taylor's death.
As expected, protests sprung up around the country. The decision drew swift criticism from demonstrators who wanted more serious charges and the 3 officers arrested. The protests were mostly peaceful, but shortly before the 9 p.m. curfew, 2 Louisville police officers were shot near a protest. The wounds were thankfully not life-threatening, and a suspect is in custody. But don't expect this to blow over anytime soon. In other news, the Republican Party is pulling out all the stops to cheat their way through another election. The Republican-led Senate Homeland Security Committee said in a report they released on Wednesday that it found no improper influence or wrongdoing by Joe Biden in his Ukraine dealings as vice president. Committee Chair Ron Johnson of Wisconsin had hoped to prove Biden's unfitness for office as we near Election Day, but he conceded that the investigation found no, quote, massive smoking guns regarding Biden or his son Hunter Biden. In fact, the New York Times headline in the story read, "Republican inquiry finds no evidence of wrongdoing by Biden." The story noted that the report, quote, appeared to be little more than a rehashing of unproven allegations that echoed a Russian disinformation campaign. And despite the gaslighting from Donald Trump and William Barr, Chad Wolf, the acting Homeland Security Secretary, on Wednesday testified under oath before the Senate that white supremacists have become the most persistent and lethal domestic security threat in the U.S. Wolf's assessment came despite repeated statements by Trump and Barr depicting left-wing extremists rioting over racial injustice as the nation's biggest internal security threat. And the dominoes keep falling. This time, it's a former National Security Council official who filed a letter in federal court on Wednesday accusing White House officials of trying to block former National Security Advisor John Bolton from releasing his best-selling book by falsely claiming it contained classified information. The former official, Ellen Knight, oversaw a pre-publication review of Bolton's book and in April cleared it for its planned June 23rd publication. Her lawyer said the process was then commandeered by political appointees, seemingly for a political purpose, resulting in a Justice Department lawsuit to block the publication. Knight also claimed she was reassigned after refusing to sign a false statement to be used in the lawsuit. The Justice Department said the letter merely proved that, quote, Bolton did not receive the appropriate and required written pre-publication approval. Gaslighting indeed. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 59 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting much cooler temperatures today, about 73 to 75, and you know what? We had some wonderful, cleansing, beautiful rain last night through the whole region, and hopefully it put a damper, literally, on these wildfires. Mix of clouds and sun today with a slight chance of a rain shower, though we just had one a moment ago, and it looks like it may be happening for a bit here this morning. Winds will be light and variable. Tonight, lows in the low 50s, partly cloudy. Winds will be light and variable. Small chance of rain tomorrow, but it looks like we might have even a greater chance than the small chance. Partly cloudy skies during the morning hours will become overcast in the afternoon. Highs around 71 to 72. Winds out of the southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus here in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have now spiked again, this time to 1,091. 1091. We're going to be 2,000 tomorrow. Confirmed deceased stand at 4, though, as you know, that is an undercount. Ragweed pollen is considered high right outside the window here at the mothership in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 27 parts per million, and that daytime UV index is moderate for the fall. Indeed. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.04 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles and relative humidity is at 97%. Ooh, that's right. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 53 and partly cloudy. Paris is 63 with a light rain. Rome is 77 and partly cloudy. Kyiv is 75 and fair. Kabul is 72 and fair. Hong Kong is 78 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 65 with showers in the vicinity and a flood warning. Sydney, Australia is 58 degrees and fair. San Francisco, California is 60 and mostly cloudy. And New York, New York is 72 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. Angela Charlton of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. France's defense minister admitted to misleading the nation about virus protections for Air Force personnel who evacuated French citizens from the Chinese city of Wuhan last winter and have been suspected of links to France's first confirmed COVID-19 cluster. The revelation by Defense Minister Florence Parly to a Senate investigating committee is a further blow to the credibility of French President Emmanuel Macron's centrist government as it battles rebounding infections. With more than 10% of France's intensive care units again occupied with COVID-19 patients and cases rising fast among the elderly, the health minister announced the closure of all restaurants, bars, and public places in the hard-hit Marseille region and restrictions on gatherings in a dozen other cities. The French military announced yesterday, Wednesday, it is deploying medical teams and equipment to the French Caribbean island of Guadeloupe to relieve hospital strain. Health Minister Olivier Véran stopped short of imposing new lockdowns, stressing the government's mantra that the French need to learn to live with the virus. We're doing everything not to go towards lockdown, he said, but he urged people to resume working from home and to stop gathering with groups of family and friends.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Anonymous worker bees at the Associated Press bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. German prosecutors said they have filed charges against 8 more Volkswagen employees accused of involvement in the company's diesel scandal, which saw it sell cars fitted with software that let them cheat on emissions tests. Prosecutors in Braunschweig did not identify the 8th, who they said include managers, and they were citing German privacy rules for not doing so. They said the suspects are aged between 50 and 72, boomers, and face charges including perpetrating or participating in serious fraud at various points between 2006 and 2015, indirectly providing incorrect certifications, and breaching a law on unfair competition. Some of them are also accused of breach of trust and tax evasion, or being accessories to those offenses. Ongoing story. I guess it's not over yet. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on. And we'll meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, and don't we deserve it? So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.